Testing, testing, testing.
Hey there.
Sounds like Bob the cat chose violence on a Wednesday.
Yeah, Bob was getting her all wound up, so now Mako will be into trouble while we're talking.
Perfect, perfect. Being a cat parent is a lot of work. Let me just make sure we get Jenny here. For everyone who is listening in, we hope that you're grabbing your favorite beverage. Anyone who's listening to this recording, we're going to get started in just a little few seconds here. We're talking about the do's and don'ts of test automation. So we're going to hang tight for 1 second. I appreciate you all. What's going on in your part of the world, Jenna?
Oh, it's like warm. Way too warm for February.
Mm, bless the
It's like
planet. Bless the planet.
like I think it was supposed to hit 70 today.
Mm-mm. Nope. Nope. Hard pass for me. Let me just get my Jenny up here. When you are ready. Oh, let's see. Love that. I can't believe I'm going to get to see you so soon. I feel like it's going to be May before we know it.
I know, and it's been so long. I
Ooh,
feel like I haven't seen you in forever.
you haven't. It's true. We've got some familiar faces in here. Hello, Tara. Hello,
Yeah.
hello. Yes. All right. Well, we're going to go ahead and get started, I think, here, just because these Twitter spaces go by pretty quickly, y'all. And so we want to make sure we leave a little bit of time for y'all in questions. So if you have any questions, we have some pre-submitted ones, y'all. But if you want to ask any questions live, feel free to do so. Just raise your hand, and we will try our best to answer them in the order that they were received. I appreciate all of the above. So I want to first introduce our amazing, amazing first guest. Jenna, could you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So, hey everybody, I'm Jenna Charlton, also known as They Wrestle Test. I have been in the testing world for, I think it's going on like 15 years at this point, sort of lost track. And about a year and a half ago, I made the transition, took the adventure from being a tester and doing test consulting and agile consulting to product. And now I work for Functionize as the director of product, kind of building things for testers. So I'm still a tester at heart. It is still what's in my spirit. And along with that, I'm working on my MFA in experience design because I want to apply better design practices to the tools that we build. Because I think better tools lead to better testers.
I love that. And I think that's in the spirited part of the conversation today. I had one of the guests who couldn't make it today, and they had a question, so I'm going to summarize it for them a little bit. But, this is all over Twitter, right? We're hearing a lot about investor fueled layoffs to reorgs. And, a lot of test automation leaders are making some tough decisions right now. And so I'm curious for you what your thoughts are in investing in test automation right now. Is this something that can help leaders do more with less, or why or why not? It feels like an age-old question, but here we are.
Yeah, so it's actually a conversation I've been having with a lot of people, and this is the time to invest in the right kinds of automation. And what I mean by that is, unfortunately, one of the places that companies tend to cut costs first um, is in headcount, is in people. They cut payroll. And one of the first places that they cut, let's be honest, is in testing because we are always seen as a cost center, because they don't, oftentimes, especially engineering leadership who don't really value quality, don't understand that while we may not produce software, we protect the company. So this is not the time that you're going to be able to talk engineering leadership and CEOs into investing in people, even though they should. So this is the time when you invest in tools that let you offboard some of the less impact oriented work. This is when you invest in tools that let you offload regression. So this is when you buy tools that are easy to get stood up, that are easy to get tests built in. So it's not the time that you start Cypress, unless everybody on your team has the skills. But this is the time that you start you start using tools that maybe will require some spend, but are going to require less spend than hiring another person with the right skill set to go ahead and make the most use of the people that you have. And let's be honest, when we bring in tools that let us offload all of that regression, testers tend to be happier. I'm speaking for myself here. My least favorite testing were regression cycles. Let me do the testing that requires me to think and feel and rationalize and evaluate, and let a computer do the stuff that's repetitive and doesn't require any any intellectual processing and meaningful thought. So there's a lot of value there in a lot of different ways.
Mm. Jenna's being on her best behavior, y'all. I'm very impressed. Ooh, oh, we're just pulling up our other. You're funny. I
I mean, I
appreciate
could
you.
be spicy.
The menu today is going to be spicy. I think that was really beautiful, and I really appreciate that. And we're just inviting our other amazing guest and speaker, Jenny, to come up. That's where you hit the accept, our dear Jenny. We'll give Jenny a moment. While we are giving Jenny a moment to get situated, being a fur parent is hard. I really like what you said there, but I think one of the things that I don't hear enough. Oh, hello, hello, Jenny.
All right, technology, y'all. It's hard.
Bless it. Bless it. Ooh. We were just talking a little bit, Jenny, about, leadership right now and investing in test automation solutions during this kind of tough economic, situation, the pros and the cons. But before we dive into that subject, Jenny, can you just say hi to our amazing people attending live and all of our listeners for this recording? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hello, all of you beautiful humans out there, and any dogs and cats that may be listening. So I'm Jenny Bramble. I'm Director of Quality Engineering here at Papa. I've been speaking and thinking about testing for a very long time. And one of the things that really interests me the most is, well, these days, what is really getting me interested and excited about testing is the ways that we can use technology to make manual testers better and to help enable cultures of quality within our teams. You were saying earlier that the economy is potentially like doing a thing. How do we invest in automation whenever the economy is doing the thing? How do we not? Oh my gosh. We're asked to do more with less all the time. And how better to do more with less than to invite automation into our lives?
I appreciate that as stage mom. I like to poke you both. I'm curious for you though, right? Like, raise your hand if you've ever joined an org, right, as a leader, and you have inherited the previous leaders, test automation solution or projects, and it wasn't what you had wanted to pick, right? But you inherited the solution. Like, how do you make the best out of a situation that you never signed up for when you're locked into like a year-long contract? Like, are there any tips or tricks for others out there?
I would say the same way that we make the best situation out of all of our situations. I mean, every single person here, every person listening, we've all worked on legacy code, right? We don't get to choose the types of things that people have done in the past. So when we come into it, we need to evaluate it and say, what's going on right now, right here with what we're looking at? And how can that serve my needs? And how can I use what we're using now to serve my needs to learn what would better serve my needs in the future?
I love that. Jenna, what are your thoughts there?
So I'm going to give you the insider perspective as somebody who works for a vendor. Um, the ball is in your court. One, while contracts are not negotiable, contracts are still negotiable. I'm going to give you the example that when I joined Functionize, we were in a contract with WalkMe. WalkMe was not the right solution and is very, very, very expensive, like astronomically expensive for what you get for it from it. I negotiated us out of it with the help of the director of marketing. We got out of the contract. So that's one piece, is that there are times that you can make those changes even if it seems like you can't. But here's the other thing, and again, I'm giving you the behind the scenes. These companies are built on the back of the renewal, and this means that if you come in and you feel it's the wrong tool, push on that vendor and say, hey, I am identifying all of these problems. These are the reasons that this is a misalignment for us. What can you do to make this align to our needs so that we can re-sign next year?
I
They're,
appreciate. Oh, go ahead.
oh, sorry. I was going to say they're likely to find a way to do it, or they're going to be upfront with you and say we can't make those changes, or it's not in our business's best interest to make those changes, and then you're able to start negotiating yourself out of the contract.
What's the number one secret for negotiating your way out of a contract? I'm just curious.
The number one secret,
Yeah.
point, but really and truly, it's doing your homework and going through point by point and saying, this is why it doesn't work. This is why it doesn't work. This is why it doesn't work. Maybe this is why I feel the price point is out of alignment. These are your competitors that can serve me better and what their price point is. And usually, basically, they come up against, we're not going to win the renewal. Let's just get this over with, because they know you're going to make things difficult for them in the meantime.
I can appreciate that. I can appreciate that. And y'all, there is a request to speak. So if you have any questions, feel free. I want to make sure we cover some other juicy topics, y'all. You know how everyone puts out theirs test automation trends of 2023, is coming down the pipeline. But I'm curious for you all, like, what's a current trend in test automation that just drives you crazy?
Automate everything.
Same way.
That drives me up the wall. So spicy take real quick. Test automation is still an incredibly young discipline, especially compared to software development as a whole or quality assurance as a whole. Test automation is still very new, very young. And we are still absolutely enamored with it. And I love that. I love our love affair with automation. But what it can do is it can get us to inappropriately apply automation, inappropriately apply tools. And we're just testing everything. We have hundreds of tests and they're not doing much. They're not giving us a lot of value, but my gosh, are they beautiful. And I am so in love with them. So my least favorite current trend is just automating everything, not removing tests, not deleting tests. Ah, yeah. Keep your love affair with automation, but also set some boundaries. Um, that's it, relationship advice and automation advice.
But I thought we skipped all that. We went straight to AI. We're not there yet, Jenny? Oh,
Oh, we're gonna get spicier here.
that's the plan. That's the plan.
Is it too spicy to say that I think AI and testing will not be friends for another 10 years? Is that too spicy?
Ooh, you heard it here first, or did
Oh.
you?
So
So
Jenny and I may not agree.
Say more, Jenna.
so
Why?
Well, okay, so to give a little bit of context, one, my company is focused in the AI space in testing. Um, so that's a little bit of background, and I know quite a bit about what our neural net looks like. I know about how we built our model in Rust. I believe in our AI infrastructure. That being said, I don't believe in everyone's AI infrastructure. Um, I do think that some of the large language models that are coming out are going to enable really interesting new things in the testing AI space. So I think that we're going to see big, big changes and improvements in the next year or so. I also think that we are really going to start to see the cream rise to the top, and we're going to see the difference between AI fakers and the real deal. Um, And that's going to be really interesting to see how that shakes out. But my least favorite trend is actually right along with this, which is that everybody wants to go wide right now. Um, there's wonderful, wonderful both tools that you can buy and frameworks that you can implement. I believe Cypress is super cool. I think Cypress is fantastic. Not so hot on Selenium anymore. Like it's gotten to the point where we are doing better new things. I'm sorry to Selenium friends, but I think that we might start to be seeing the end of it. That being said, there are companies who have massive Selenium frameworks, and you don't just throw that away. So it's not like Selenium is gone tomorrow, but I do think that we're going to start to see a shift. That being said, there are a lot of vendors out there who, because they can't do one thing exceptionally well, have started to do a lot of things mediocre. Um, there are new players in the test automation space every day. And some of them are coming from vendors that have never been in the testing space before. Um, I'm going to give you some examples. There are test automation company frameworks or vendors that are now trying to move into the accessibility space. I don't trust it. Accessibility takes a unique and very, very specific and intentional skill set. And you don't just decide one day, I'm going to start bringing accessibility into my testing. You go and you learn about it. You learn the laws. You learn the requirements. Get uh, you get familiar with WCAG. You go do your ICAAP certification. Like, you get ready for that. You don't just jump in. There's also, this big push for static analysis for CI/CD that everybody wants to go wide into, and they don't have the background for it and the infrastructure for it. So my trend that I dislike is going wide instead of getting better.
I really appreciate that. I do want to come back to accessibility and automation because I would push back with you a little bit, but this isn't my show right now. I want to make sure that we also hear from our Jenny Bramble. Jenny Bramble, same question. I know we talked about all the things, but do you agree? Do you disagree with our Jenna?
Yes, no, maybe,
All the
probably a
above?
little, maybe. So I think they are 100% right that we're seeing people go wide and not go narrow, and that there are some people out there who are good players in the AI space for automation, for testing. I just don't trust them. Like, uh, okay, I feel like an old person being like, I don't trust computers. But what I mean by that is that a lot of the AI that I've seen doesn't feel useful or doesn't feel real. And part of that's probably some bias on my part and not looking into it super deeply. So if anyone's listening and they want to demo something amazing, hit a girl up. But yeah, I think that does hit the nail on the head, Jenna. You said something about the difference between fakers and the real deal and that coming to the top. And I think once we start seeing that happening, and once we start seeing a little bit more approachability for it, we're definitely going to see some AI going out there. I just don't think it's going to be any time in the next couple of years.
I think that's fair, and I am very, very, what's the right word, reticent to embrace AI for accessibility. Anybody who's followed me knows how much I rail against like the accessibility overlays and things like that, and I'm very, very concerned about the risk to disabled users when we rely on AI to guarantee their experience. But I think there's a big difference between AI in general test automation and AI moving into the accessibility space. And I think it's two different conversations. And I am a little bit gatekeepery when it comes to accessibility, because there are so many people, so many companies trying to move into that space that don't have the best interest of the user at heart, and that scares me.
I think there's a lot of parallels to some of the other ways AI has been used when it's being created by people that don't take the full population into consideration and don't have direct experience with the populations they're trying to serve. Yeah, they're going to get it wrong. And they're probably going to get it wrong to the point where they actually harm users. So I'm with you on that, especially for the accessibility moment. We humans can't teach other humans how to be kind with accessibility. We are in no place to teach computers.
I love this though. I wanna go back though, just for some of our listeners, whether it's live and or this recording. And again, for anyone who's listening, you can always request to speak if you agree or disagree with any of our amazing guests here today. That's what this hour is here for. I absolutely adore these two leaders. I'm curious, just going back a little bit more for y'all. Have you all, because you've been in this space now for a while, has your perspective on some of you talked a little bit earlier, Jenna, about, being ardent about certain practices around accessibility. I'm curious for you all, have any of your viewpoints changed from, do this, do that when it comes to test automation? Has your perspective shifted at all over the years? And like, what's been the biggest perspective shift as you continue to gain more experiences in test automation in this space?
When I started as a tester, I refused to do automation. Computers are going to steal our jobs. Computers can't do anything as good as I can do it. I'm always going to be better than a computer. So I was really very antagonistic, very, very against automation because I was frankly scared of it and didn't understand it. If anyone wants to draw parallels between that and how I feel about AI, please feel free. Um, but as I've gotten older, as I've started to mature a little bit more in my career, I recognize the value of tools. Like there is a place for every single tool that I can potentially have in my toolbox. So I've wanted as I've gotten older, I've said automation is a helper for me. Automation is something that is going to make my job different. It's not going to make my job worse, and it's not going to take my job away. So that's one of the major ways that I've changed. But within my automation practice, one of the things that I've seen change over the past few years is how I have approached automation. Previously, I wrote automation in order to find bugs, in order to prove that there were bugs out there. And these days, I write automation in order to verify people's expectations.
Can you say that again? Can you repeat that again?
I no longer write automation to find bugs and defects. I write automation in order to verify expectations of my systems.
I love that so much. I want to cross stitch them a pillow. Can you expand upon that? I love that.
Yeah. So automation doesn't find defects. It just tells you about. So what happens when you're writing automation is you say, this is the expected state of the system. I expect the system to look like this. Automation runs and it tells you if the system meets those expectations. We don't know if that's a bug. We don't know if that's a defect. We don't know if it is or not. We need a human to come in and say, yes, that's a bug. Yes, that's a defect. Yes, that's wrong. Or the human will come in and say, oh, we forgot to update the test. Silly us. That's not finding a bug. That's just saying our expectations were incorrect and we need to reset them. Yeah, so that's one of my favorite things is stepping away from automation as a bug detection system and automation and embracing automation as something that tells me if my expectations are being met.
Woo, Jenna.
So, one, I totally agree with Jenny on some of this. Um, Automation helps us find all of the unknowns that we know about. It doesn't help us find the unknown unknowns. So, it confirms what we know, but it cannot confirm what we don't know. And that's the difference. That's the difference between the human and automation. But the biggest change that I found in my thinking around automation is when I first became a tester, coming from outside of technology, because I worked like customer service jobs and stuff. I just got a good opportunity and got to try testing after being in a help desk for a company. And I thought that the end all be all of a testing career was to move into automation. And I spent years trying to learn to code on my own, trying to figure it out, feeling like this is what I had to do and who I had to be, or eventually I wouldn't be able to be in testing anymore and I would have to change to another, area in IT. Now, granted, I did move over to the product side, but I'm still a tester at heart. But I've realized my thinking has changed because I've been exposed to so much more and I understand so much more and I see where the people and automation are valuable and they're two different places. um, I've learned that you can stay manual your whole career, and that is 100% acceptable, is 100% valid, and there is a place for you that way. And you can also say, I want to do automation, and that's the only thing I want to do. And that is 100% valid, and it's 100% acceptable, and there's a place for you. You don't have to feel like you have to be one or the other. So my perspective on where everyone fits changed as I learned more.
I really appreciate that. I also want to say, y'all, we have a living legend with us today, and totally no pressure, friend, if you don't want to come and share some thoughts too. But I wouldn't be a stage mom if I didn't invite someone to come up and speak. So we'll let them decide. They have the DM. They know what's up. Lisa, that's you, if you are curious, anyone, but no pressure. I want to say too, I love Twitter Spaces so much, y'all. It's the interactive podcast that we need and deserve in 2023. Lisa Crispin, is that you on a Twitter Space? It's okay. We're gonna get there. You just hit the mic button, Lisa.
Oh, a mute button. Okay.
Do
Well,
it.
see, I don't do this. It's just so nice to see you all. I'm out in the barn and I just forgot to even look at Twitter, so the reminder didn't help me very much. But I'm having to feed the donkey, so I'm mostly just going to listen in. But it's great. Thank you. It's a lot of great people here.
We adore you, and we hope that all of the animals are well. We just wanted to say hi and have you listen in too. So thank you so much for tuning
Oh,
in, and
thank
we're gonna have to do
you.
another one of these.
Yeah.
Yes. I want to go back though to I want to go back to something you said, Jenny. You talked a little bit about requirements there. I'm curious for you, what is one of the things that I hear a lot from some of my girlfriends, directors of QA and whatnot, is this pressure right now around mobile, right? And this pressure around codeless, scriptless, and being forced to prove, value right away. They're going through all these POCs, and nothing is meeting the mark. I'm curious for either of you or anyone, do you feel like, solutions, you don't need to name any, but solutions that are, offering mobile scriptless solutions and test automation, do you feel like they're meeting the mark at all?
Yes, no, maybe so. Jenna, did you have something to say on this?
I have an opinion.
Ooh.
I
My
so
favorite.
yeah, let me be 100% honest. We at my organization we do low code. Really, we're kind of low code, high code, but we do mobile web well. But mobile native with any sort of low code, no code solution is an unsolved and potentially unsolvable at this time problem. Appium is not the truth in the way. It is a usable solution today, but it definitely is not a long-term solution. There's a lot of issues, and nobody, in my perspective, in my opinion, and I've tried a lot of tools, no one solved this problem.
Can you explain for any of our listeners on this recording that may be adjacent in a field but not familiar with mobile testing what Appium is and why this problem is unsolvable?
So Appium is kind of like Selenium for mobile, mobile native. That was the alarm to remind me to take a pill. So Appium is basically like Selenium for mobile native. It is the de facto solution right now for building mobile tests, which means that anyone who's doing low code, no code is probably, if they're talking about mobile native, building that on Appium. So if they're using some sort of record and playback process, like practice in some way. They have some sort of recorder. They're wrapping that around Appium. But Appium is slow, it's buggy, and this isn't a slight on the creators of Appium. This is just, we're early days. Um, and so it's not super effective. And once you wrap anything, by the way, like Selenium wrappers and stuff, all of that, anytime you add another layer of complexity and abstraction to any of these tools, they get slower. And they get buggier because you've got your own bugs that are in the wrapper and you've got the bugs that are in Selenium. And now, like, we're compounding the bugs exponentially. So it's just not there yet. But also, mobile is not my preferred space. So while I've done a lot of research, there are probably people who have more expertise in this area than I do.
Well, and you bring up a really good point there too, Jenna, and I'm curious to also hear you chime in a moment here too, Jenny. And again, anyone, you can always raise your hands and invite yourself to speak. But Jenna, I'm curious for you because it's a small testing community after all, y'all. One of the things in a previous company that I had worked at too, we saw a huge increase over the year via Google Analytics. We saw a huge increase in people using mobile, right, on their devices. I'm curious though. Have you seen from your dashboard or any of your user analytics, have you seen a shift at all down in mobile usage? Or can you just explain a little bit more about your perspectives on mobile versus web?
So there's a misconception, which is that all mobile is mobile native. But even when we talk about apps, a lot of times we're looking at mobile web, and it's mobile web that's intended to look like an app, which means it's a responsive website, and it scales and it identifies the type of device. And that's a lot easier of a problem to solve because all we have to do is use some sort of emulator. And I apologize, I can't give away the secret sauce, but you use some sort of emulation to go ahead and work to create those tests, or create that record and playback or create that functionality. But when we get to native, that's different. And I feel like we're actually seeing a little bit less mobile native and a little more mobile web. And that might just be what I've encountered recently, but I feel like we're seeing a little less of that. And I think it's a combination of expertise that's out there and being able to have developers that are a little more generalist and not having to have like developers who are specifically mobile. It's a mixed bag.
Jenny, thoughts on that?
So mobile is my preferred space. It is my favorite platform. Don't tell my web developers. I love y'all too, but mobile. So I think Jenna is right. Jenna is right. The mobile space is always going to be hard to make codeless, scriptless automation for. It just has some absolute weirdness to it that is always going to make that hard. And the kinds of things we should be using apps for are difficult to test in automated fashions, which makes it more difficult to create a wrapper for that. One thing I will say is not everything needs to be an app. If you're making an app, step back and say, why am I making an app? And could this be a website instead? Because the answer 90% of the time is yes. Looking at you, all the different apps that want me to pay my bills through you.
Chris is vibing with us. We appreciate you being here, Chris.
I think it's always going to be hard. I do see more native than non-native, and I think that is healthier overall. Like, we should be writing applications in the language that our phone speaks. It's always going to be more buggy and more awful if we're not using Swift and Kotlin. We should also, and here's another spicy take, let's just do it.
Ready?
We should not be using cross-platform solutions. A cross-platform solution is neither. Write yourself an iOS app, write yourself an Android app. Do not write one app that's supposed to do both. And here's why. Android users and iPhone users are completely different people with completely different brains. There are different standards for iOS. There's different standards for Android. The buttons are different. You put the menus in different places. Oh my gosh. So right for your users. Otherwise, what's going to happen is you're going to make iOS designs and then make the Android users use a app designed for iOS people.
You tell that to Clubhouse. I'm just kidding. Too soon? Sorry. R.I.P.
Spicy take, spicy take.
That's what we're here for. That's what we're doing, Jenna.
Oh, I was going to say, but also the reason that you're seeing more mobile web over mobile native, because you don't have to be as concerned with platform, because all you're worried about is responsive.
100% on that. Like, if you're building an app, build it for the platform that you're going to be expecting your users to use it on. But if you're building for mobile web, I mean, go wild.
Speaking of wild, no, I really try and do segues, but they don't always work for me. I am curious, though. One of the things that, we talk a little bit about the do's and don'ts, test automation. And I think that, and guilty here because I've worked at a few test automation solutions now, but, we often hear all of these like software quality success stories, right? From all of these customers plastered over with logos. And it's all about connecting your test automation solutions to your CI, like pipeline. And I'm curious for you all why this is all very glamorous. And we've had these conversations before, but I'm curious for any of our listeners here and or anyone who's listening to this recording. I want to talk a little bit more about the hidden costs here, right? I don't think that we talk about that enough in the industry and have like honest takes on it. So I'm curious for, I know we've had this conversation before, Jenny, about the good, the bad, the ugly for connecting, to your favorite CI tools. Like, can you maybe talk a little bit more about what are the hidden costs there that we don't talk about, both from a people and from a technological perspective, and as well, Jenna?
Ooh, hidden costs, my absolute favorite. Nothing is cheap. It doesn't matter if it's free, it is not cheap. Whenever we're talking about automation, actually, let me back up for a second. So one of the things that I'm doing at my company right now is we are working on getting automation in play. Like we're doing Appium. So if you hate Appium, that's cool. But I don't. I love it a little bit. So we have a lot of hidden costs that are coming up around this. And I want to talk through a couple of them just real quick. The first is I had to write an RFC. So we were picking what platform we're going to use, what test automation thing we're going to use. I took a week or so and wrote an RFC. Here's why we want to go with Appium. Here's what I'm thinking. Here's the reasons it's good. Here's why we should do test automation in the first place. And I presented it. And one of my developers said, well, what about this other tool? I'm like, well, you write your own friggin' RFC. And he did. So he spent, this is a senior developer, spent a couple of weeks putting a proof of concept of his preferred tool together, writing an RFC on it, doing other work while he was doing that. But it did take time out of his schedule to put this together. We ended up going with Appium for a lot of reasons. So that's my first set of hidden costs, is making that decision. And then I look around my team and I don't have an Appium developer on my team. Gonna have to go hire one. Y'all know how hard it is to hire people. Hiring is expensive. So now I've got myself, a manager, a couple of seniors, all needing to take 3 or 4 hours out of their week to hire somebody. And that's per person. Like per candidate that we are interviewing, we're taking 3 to 4 hours out of 4 people's lives. And then after all of that, we pick somebody, we hire them. Hooray, we're done, right? We are not done. Because I have to get him trained up. I have to integrate him into our systems. I have to make sure that he has the support that he needs to be a successful developer with my team. So there's another cost. And if I wasn't actually hiring somebody specifically to get this framework in play, I would have to take one of my team members completely off of any of the manual testing they're doing and have them write an Appium-based test suite. The cost there is astronomical. I am losing an entire person for however long it's going to be in order to get this thing put together. And I might not see a return on what they're doing for months, like literal months. because they're going to have to ramp up. They're going to have to put this thing in play. They're going to have to test it. They're going to have to go back and forth a whole bunch. It's so expensive to start this up. And Appium is a free tool. We're not paying for Appium, but I am paying for this investment in Appium. So there's a lot going on.
I appreciate that. And I think before I dive into a fault for that too, I want to make sure, one, thank you for hiring people. But two, in this economy, no, all jokes aside, I want to hear your take on this too, Jenna. And we're just talking for a little bit for everyone who's just tuning in here. We're talking a little bit about some of the hidden costs for, connecting all of your test automation solutions to your, preferred CI.
So, I completely agree with Jenny as far as kind of the human cost associated. But there are other costs too that we sometimes don't consider because they're a little outside of our purview. And these are things like how are you right now hosting things like your CI/CD tools? Is this something that you host on-prem? Is this something you're hosting through AWS? Like who is paying that bill and how much is it going to cost you? Because there's a cost there. So there's an infrastructure cost. You may have some human cost in actually doing the work to connect those tools. However, it should be relatively simple to connect, like to use API calls from Jenkins to, whatever your test automation is, whether it's your internal automation or a vendor. I will say it's easier to do with a vendor because they've like streamlined it for you and created everything already. Doesn't mean you can't do it if you're in-house. Like if you've built something yourself, you absolutely can do it. You just have to do more of that work yourself. Of course, there's a cost, no matter what, in-house or a vendor. So somehow you're paying that bill. But I think the one thing that you should think about outside of everything Jenny mentioned around the human cost is there's an infrastructure cost, and you've got to think about that infrastructure cost and whether you are currently ready financially to support that as a business.
I love that because you're right. We don't often think of infrastructure as testers, but as somebody that manages now and has to think about that, I definitely have a small heart attack once in a while when we run out of GitHub actions or when we need to bump up something random because suddenly we're using way more resources. So as we're jumping into test automation, especially from a manager level, think about what it's going to cost and prep your people for it.
And set alerts.
Set alerts. I also love that you brought up GitHub Actions. And it goes back to kind of your previous point too, like for both of you too, you're talking about those hidden costs from an infrastructure perspective. But at the end of the day, like, why are we writing some of these tests to begin with, right? Like some of it just feels like we are stroking leadership's egos. You know what I mean? I'm curious though for you all too, like, what advice would you give? Because I know this is like a silly topic, but this is something that always grinds my gears is, all of those people that would sign on to one of our, solutions that we were offering. And they would say, I would be that community manager in that forum. And I would say, what are your goals this week? And a new customer would like tune in and God bless them. They would be like, well, our goal is to get to 100% coverage, and a lot of people actually believe this. And this is the fantasy that they sold to their CTO. Just for anyone who's listening to this recording live and or offline, what is your number one advice for someone who has bought into that fantasy, which is like delusional drag baby behavior, but we're here for it, but we're not?
I recommend therapy.
Ooh.
So outside of therapy, which you might really need it if you're that into coverage, I think other folks have probably heard me talk about this. Coverage is a myth. 100% code coverage means less than zero. It is a negative metric because code coverage doesn't mean meaningful and it doesn't mean quality. I can write you 100% code coverage for tests that pass every single time. But I hit 100%. Where's the value? The value is in understanding what do your customers use? What do your customers value? What do you as a business value? What will protect your brand? What will protect you from being sued and liability? And identifying the risks and focusing on creating meaningful tests, both automated and manual, around those things. I don't care if that coverage means that you hit 15% coverage. You've hit what matters, not what makes somebody feel good.
Jenny?
Anytime that I hear people talking about 100% code coverage, when I start probing into that, what I hear is that they are in a very low trust environment. And they think 100% code coverage is going to somehow make them become trusted. And that's not how it works. You are trying to solve a emotional problem with a hammer. When there's low trust and you say, well, if I can get to 100% coverage, or if I can test everything, they'll finally trust me. They're never going to trust you, because you're never going to be able to do that. And you're just going to hurt yourself. Going for 100% code coverage, going for 50%, going for 20% is a bad metric that can be used as a weapon more than it can be used as a tool to help you. So when you are in that kind of situation, step back and ask, what are you trying to achieve with, quote, 100% coverage, unquote? What do you actually want? Do you want to be trusted? Then start having more conversations around the types of testing you're doing. Create test artifacts. Talk about why you're not doing certain types of testing, and create that confidence, that trust that says, I am a professional who is doing professional things out of my subject matter expertise mindset. And let me just do that.
And be a quality coach. And what I mean by that is engage everyone. This is not a single person decision. This is a team decision and a team agreement on what we value and what matters. Get that working agreement.
And Lisa, I'm not sure if you're raising your hand, but you can actually speak right now. Yeah.
That was an accident. Sorry. No, I was trying to find an emoji to agree heartily, and I accidentally raised my hand.
Well, there you go. There you go. If we have Lisa Crispin's endorsement, we are fully on board with this. I just love having all of my girlfriends together. Like, this is everything. My squirrel friends, if you will. I do want to go back, though. This was super powerful, y'all. And Jenna, you said something really, really great here. But I think I also, for anyone who's listening to this recording, I always like to keep it, not just topical in terms of the infrastructure. I want to focus a little bit more on investing in yourself, right? We know, right, that despite popular opinions, despite everything, the doom and gloom in tech, and there are some real serious impacts happening right now for a lot of us. But we are seeing that the test automation market is expected to grow. I think there was a recent Forbes article saying it was supposed to grow by 16.4% between 2022 and 2027. I'm curious for you all, with so many test automation leaders, whether they're an individual contributor and or a manager that recently had their roles impacted, what do you think is the number one do when it comes to investing in continuous learning and test automation right now?
I'm going to sound like I'm pandering to Jenna, but I'm totally not. Learn about the low code and no code tools that are out there. Like, you can sit down and learn a ton about JavaScript. You can learn a ton about Swift, about Kotlin, about all of those things, and develop yourself professionally in those kinds of ways. But what I have started really looking for in the people that I'm hiring is their ability to apply tools to problems. Do you know what tools are out there? Do you know what methodologies are out there? I have this specific problem. Can you tell me the pros and cons of 2 tools that I could potentially use to solve this? Because, I mean, no bones about it, y'all. Layoffs are here. They're coming. We are starting to see a reduction in the available people we have in our companies. So if I can interview you and you can sit down and say, yeah, you know what? I got laid off last week, but I've been doing a bunch of research. And have you heard about Functionize? Let me talk to you about some of the pros and cons of this specific tool that we could potentially bring in and use to make our systems better. That is so much more interesting to me right now as a manager than someone who is coming in and saying, "Hey, I learned 14 languages over the past 3 weeks." Um, yeah, so so that's one thing I would say that I think will start setting people apart is learn what tools are out there, learn how to apply them, when not to apply them, and be able to speak to that in your interviews.
And just before Jen, just for you chime in here too, I think that's really powerful. One thing I would recommend to people is a lot of tools out there right now. When you want to sign up for them, you want to get a trial, you want to go through a learning journey, a lot of them will block personal emails for multiple reasons. There are workarounds, y'all, so reach out to support. A lot of times this is done either because you are a competitor doing some, kind of secret ops, or because of malicious, intent. So have a conversation. There's a lot of ways you can continue to learn about new tools while still having a personal email and not a professional one because you may have been impacted in your role. I just wanted to point that out there from previous experience. Jenna.
So message me if you want to know how to get around them because, I may have gotten around a lot of them. Um, yeah. But also, if you want to learn about Functionize, feel free to send me a message. I will get you. I will get you a trial with a VM and set you up. I want you to learn about things. So, along with what Jenny said about learning about tools, I know how some people feel, but AI is here, and AI is here to stay. Um, Spend some time learning about large language models. Spend some time learning about things like what the difference is between a traditional AI and a neural net, and some of the other ways, like implementations of AI and machine learning. Spend some time learning about what differences there are in the way we train models, so that you can speak to. I understand that this is a a supervisory trained model versus some of the other implementations. It You don't have to be an expert. I'm not an expert, but it helps to speak intelligently about it, and it helps to make you a resource for when you are engaged with people and they're talking about these things and you want to be able to be a part of the conversation, or you're speaking to a manager and you say, we need to get a tool and these are some of the options, and this is why these options are better than others. So that's one thing. Another is learn how to do things like use ChatGPT to help you generate little code snippets. I do have some ethical feelings around the way ChatGPT was trained and all that kind of stuff. However, it is super useful. I use it all the time because I'm a terrible coder. It solves my problems for me. So, that's valuable. And the other thing isn't necessarily about learning, but it is an investment in yourself. If you are looking for a job, even if you're not looking for a job right now, this is the time to get your resume together. I cannot I cannot emphasize enough how valuable a resume writer is to help you be ready for that journey. They will ask you questions you would never think to go through. They'll send you lists of 50 to 100 questions about your experience, about what you've done, about your achievements. They're going to make you think really critically about it, and then they're going to help you turn that into a meaningful story. And that gets you noticed. So if you can afford to spend the money to do it, do it.
I love that so much, and I think too, y'all, like so many people have been, impacted in their roles before. There are so many people out there that are willing to also review your resume. So whether you want to get someone experienced, whether you don't necessarily have the funds, and you want to create an accountability circle, so at least you all are reviewing for each other. Some peer review never hurts y'all. But I know that we are coming up on time too, but I want to make sure that we hold a space too, because one of the things, I don't know about y'all who know this about me, but creativity is something I care a lot about. And I get really, really, really tired sometimes about hearing about, oh, let's teach developers about unit tests. But It's it's something that's important, and a lot of people in software development do care about software quality, and they do care about learning more about testing. But we're seeing a big shift, I feel like, more and more than ever, as a lot of quality champions, specifically QA, are being their roles are being impacted, right? We're seeing all of these, testing predictions for 2023 around testing and production, right, and shifting right, and we're hearing about all the perks, right, of it. So I'm curious for you all, and for you, Jenny and Jenna, what's a pro and con from your years of experience for testing and production?
I have recently at my job been encouraging people to just YOLO it to prod. There are a lot of things that we can't learn from our staging environments. We can't learn how users are going to interact with something in the real world. We can't always test with real world data. There's only so much we can do on a staging environment, on a simulated environment. If you have the ability to roll back quickly, then you should be way more risk tolerant. As long as you're not hurting people or damaging your data, put it out there, man. See what happens. It's going to be awesome, I promise. And if it isn't awesome, then flip your feature flag off. Roll back. Make sure you do have a mitigation strategy in place for if it goes wrong, but push it to prod. Learn, experiment, get wild.
Jenny, I appreciate you so much. We've come a long way.
So I agree in some respects. Definitely, if you can roll back, if you are in place to make fixes quickly, it's important that before you have a conversation about what we are going to push with a lighter amount of testing or potentially no testing, that there is an understanding of what should and shouldn't go through that process. If it is a breaking change that can't be reverted, then it does not go through that process. If it's something we can roll back, if it is a simple line of code fix, then sure, let's go ahead and throw it out and see what happens. But the other part of shifting right that I think is super important is data collection. And so we talk a lot about testing and production, but that also means that we're testing the data that we're collecting, which this means analyzing the monitoring data, analyzing the kinds of errors that we're seeing in production, analyzing the performance that we see in production. And that's kind of the ignored piece of this that I think is really, really, really important. Um, you rarely will find the actual performance issues in your performance testing. You're going to find them in prod. So you got to watch for them.
We need to stop throwing things over the wall to production. Monitor it, check it. If you're putting it out there, especially with limited testing, then you should be watching it like an absolute hawk. If you can't do that, then you can't YOLO to prod.
When are we getting t-shirts made of YOLO to prod? When's it happening, Jenny?
I will have stickers at my next conference. There will be ones that say, please don't YOLO to prod, and please do YOLO to prod.
OMG. So that's actually a perfect moment here, y'all, because we do want to be respectful of y'all and your time here. But this call is not brought to you by Functionize, which we are very grateful for sponsoring Agile TD. But I do think, y'all, the reason why I put Jenny and Jenna together is not just because we've been Scroll friends for years. It's also because they're both going to be coming together and doing some amazing talks at Agile TD, which is coming up end of May in Chicago. There's going to be hands-on tutorials. Lisa's actually doing one as well. But there's also going to be live talks as well, a keynote from Jenna, and also a great talk from Jenny. I'm curious for you all, not to give too much away, what's one key takeaway that people are going to benefit from attending live? Jenny, tell us a little bit about your talk, TLDR.
So I am actually giving a talk about YOLOing things to prod. It's about de-risking regression. So we have to upgrade our libraries. We have to upgrade our systems. Sometimes we do big, giant upgrades. How do we make those less scary and less terrifying for people? How can we show ourselves as subject matter experts and engage our developers and get them to trust us? How can we push things to production and feel good about it when it feels like they are super large? So the biggest takeaway from that is tell everybody what you are not testing and why you are not testing whatever it is.
I love that so much. And for anyone else, like, both of these speakers are incredible and their performances live are insane. But one of the reasons why I love these leaders is how approachable they are in person, how much information you will get from them live, offline. So just it's one of my favorite things about in-person conferences, and I know that for many people right now, budget is definitely a concern. I want to shout out the Agile TD community and leaders for creating discounted tickets right now for people to attend, whether you've experienced an economic hardship, if you're a student, if you are, a young professional. So many opportunities out there to take advantage from them. But Jenna, I want to talk about you and your talk.
Yes. So I'm really excited because it's my first keynote. And I'm doing a talk called Imperfect Agile, Lessons Learned from an Imperfect Agile Transformation. And this is really my story and kind of the story of my organization and some other organizations I've worked for in kind of learning what it really means to be agile versus do agile. And some of you know I'm somewhat irreverent, and I like my over the top slide decks that are cute and quirky. So you've definitely got a lot of that in there. But I'm just really excited to tell the stories of kind of what I've learned and make those stories transferable to everybody else, and how you can kind of learn from my lessons and not make the same mistakes. Because I am a storyteller, if you couldn't tell.
I love that so much. And I want to make sure that we just wrap. I know we're a few minutes over. I know you both are amazing fur baby parents and also have lives. So I want to say thank you so much for giving some time to all of our listeners today. But lastly, I just want to, again, thinking a little bit about today and this climate and around tech and a lot of people having to make hard decisions. And again, just remember, everyone, despite the headlines, a lot of smaller organizations in tech are hiring. So please continue to post those opportunities so that you do not add fuel to the fire for these activist investor fueled layoffs. Sorry, that's maybe off my high horse. Oops. That said, though, what's one piece of advice that you all would give to help those impacted stand out from the crowd? Jenny.
The major piece of advice that I would give you is apply early and often. The way to stand out from the crowd is to get in front of as many people as you can, to show empathy, and to lean into the fact that you are a subject matter expert. The fact that you were laid off, the fact that there was a reduction in force, does not mean you are not an expert. Your years and your career did not disappear just because you got laid off. So put yourself out there. You've got this. I believe in you.
I love that.
My biggest suggestion, other than what I gave earlier, which is if you can hire a resume writer, is find a way not only to show your expertise, but to show who you are and to be really intentional about that. You're not, now you may just have to take a job. That happens sometimes. But ultimately, the goal is to find the right one. So finding where you can fit that aligns with who you are. I have worked for organizations that are a personal and emotional mismatch. And it's really, really difficult. Be 100% authentically you, because if you're not, once you start the job after getting it, you're not going to want to stay in the job. So if you have the ability, if you have the privilege to be able to wait for the right opportunity, be authentic, and grab the right opportunity. Completely understanding that sometimes you just got to pay the bills. But I think that's my biggest advice.
I really appreciate that. And I was on a Twitter space years ago when this first came out, and it feels like it's been years anyway. And there was a single mom, and she told me, she said, "That all sounds great, Tristan, but sometimes when you're a single mom and you've got kids and you've got past rent due, sometimes yellow flags become green flags." And so I really like what you said there. And I do think that for anyone, it's very easy to put on your professional banter. And I'm not saying be, not professional, but you do want to give people, and this is brought to you by someone who helped recruit 110 people in 1 year back in the day, like you do want to be authentic. I would say you also, echoing everything Jenny and Jenna said, also make sure that when you're talking with a recruiter, if you're not vibing, you're not vibing. Don't try and be inauthentic with them, right? Because they are, unfortunately, in many ways, the gatekeeper, and you don't want to go around them. It's not going to be good for you. But if you are vibing with a recruiter, like carry that relationship, because this may not be the opportunity, but do not underestimate recruiters and their networks. If they believe in you and your skills and competencies, they will advocate for you. I had plenty of people that were not the right fit for that hiring manager, and I helped place them elsewhere. So do not disregard, do not disrespect, and do not be dismissive of that recruiter. They are not your servant, and a lot of them right now are in a hard place and a hard time right now because their roles are being impacted more than anyone we know in this industry. So TLDR, be kind to that recruiter. The other thing I would say as well is have a friend and or a past boss and or a mentor do a LinkedIn scan. Jenna made a really, really good point around resume writing. And that's so important. Remember too, though, that so many recruiters, they're not using a resume. They're not reading your cover letter. What they're doing is doing a Boolean search with an applicant tracking system. They're filtering out anyone with X number or less years of experience. They're looking for specific skill sets. So make sure your LinkedIn is live and it's ready. Make sure your GitHub profile looks real good. If you've had any open source projects, make sure you list them. If you've had any blogs, you've had any other resources out there, YouTube videos, anything, make yourself a holistic and competitive candidate, and read the whole job description before you apply. I would say those are a few things. But I want to say lastly, Jenny, Jenna, any last words as we close?
The testing community is absolutely worth being a part of, in large part because we've got these beautiful spaces and these beautiful ways that we can support each other. So just thanks for being y'all.
Testing is the absolute most wonderful, warm, caring community in all of tech. And I feel incredibly privileged and blessed to be a part of it because it's given me more than I've given it. And I'm just continuing to try and give as much as I'm getting out of it. And I hope that you all are getting something out of it too.
We got so much out of this conversation. I always want to say it's so good to get our squirrel friends together, and we had some spicy takes in this conversation. And we definitely had some new epiphanies as well as some nostalgia. And we also got super hyped about your upcoming talks at Agile TD USA happening at the end of May. I want to encourage everyone, whether you're in Chicago or the metro area and or, you can make it out for any of their discounted tickets. There is nothing like seeing Jenny and Jenna live and all these other amazing speakers and also people in tutorials. But with that said, we are a few minutes over, so I want to keep these light and snappy. Please stay tuned as we're going to be having more of our amazing speakers come and share recommended practices, not best practices, in future Twitter spaces. I adore you both so much, and thank you so much for spending your time. And with that said, goodbye. Goodbye.
Bye all.
Bye.
Bye.